Hey everybody, Craig Cottle, survival instructor with dansdepot.com, back with another installment of Survival Q&A with Craig. So what we're going to do today is, if you are a member of our forums on dansdepot.com, you are probably aware of Regulator 5. Regulator 5 is a prominent presence on our forums, and I would consider what he puts out there very good, sound survival advice. So I highly recommend you get on there. One of the things he suggested I do on video was to provide some ways of what most people refer to as natural navigation. Let's say, for example, you have some sort of accident or some sort of issue and you've lost your everyday carry, which probably should include some methodology for determining direction. And it's bad weather, cloudy day, you don't have the sun, you don't have all the other things that we normally utilize to determine direction. How do we go about determining direction? There's a lot of things that we can do, and a lot of people write this stuff down in blogs and books, and I have yet to find anybody put this on video. So that's what we're going to do today as best we can. So some of the things that Regulator 5 came up with, and I'm going to show these on camera as best I can, but true branch growth is more dense on the southern and eastern sides of a tree in the northern hemisphere, moss growing more predominantly on the northern side of trees and rocks, and during winter and early spring, snow will melt slower on the northern side of hills, mountains, buildings than other sides due to sun warmth. Unfortunately, I can't do that one because I don't have any snow here. And I'll dig into my photos and see if I can find some photos of that, because I think I took a photo of that this past winter. Knowing the area of the map from Map Recon, basically you do prior planning, which just brings up a good subject. Whenever you're going to travel, you need to do a basic study of where it is that you're going, so that you have an understanding of how rivers are, where they are, what water sources are, what places you have to get hidden away from people if you need to get hidden away from them, what kind of places will provide shelter if the place that you're going to doesn't pan out, and on and on and on. So I always do pre-planning before you go anywhere. So those are the things I'm going to show on camera, and I just want to bring them up so you have an idea of those. I've got a few more if I can find some good natural species out here to indicate, and I think I can. So glad you're with us. Couple words of caution before I get started on determining direction utilizing trees and their growth is that when you do this, you're going to want to find a tree that is basically right out in the open. So what you have behind me, this tree that's basically sticking above my head, and I'm going to get behind the camera and pan in on some of these things too, is that trees that are in forested canopy, their branches are going to go wherever they can get sunlight. So if there's another tree blocking sun in a southerly direction and there's some off to the west, the branches on that tree will gravitate going towards where they get a lot of sunlight, just to maintain their growth. So you can't really do what I'm getting ready to discuss in full forested canopy. If there's any way that you can do that, the best way to do that is to find the biggest and baddest tree out of every one that is in the vicinity. So find the largest tree you possibly can, because what that tree is the tree that was there first, typically. I mean, that's not a rule, but that's a good guess. And that tree is going to have the indicators of being heavy. And what I mean by heavy is most of the branches are going to fall on one side, and usually that is on the most southern side of the tree. So now I'm behind the camera, and this is the tree that I was mentioning. So if I pan in, you'll see, and I'm going to try to use the editing process to point out these branches. These branches right here are the ones that are pointing due south, because we know that in the northern hemisphere, the sun primarily resides in the southern sky. So a tree that has full exposure to the sunlight, basically a tree in the open, which I don't know if you can tell from this camera shot or not, but this particular tree is basically sitting in the open. The branches that you see are heavier on this side of the tree, the one that's basically to your left as you're viewing it here. That is the southern sky, okay? Now, what I meant earlier is that you'll also notice and this is worthy of note, is the tree right next to it, which is basically another branch. If I pan back out, you'll see that this is the same tree. But as we get in close again, you'll notice the tree part that is on the right has branches that are pointing basically due north, okay? And that's why I'm trying to point out to you that it's difficult in forested canopy, because that particular tree right there is competing with the larger section of its own self, and so the branches are going the other way to get more sunlight, because the larger section is the one capturing all the sunlight in the southern sky. So that's why it's pretty confusing. But you will notice, again, these branches are on the heavy side of the tree, and I'm going to try to find a couple other trees to point this out. So this is another one, and this is basically a naturalist discussion as much as it is a natural navigation discussion. Basically what you've got here is a tree that was growing in an area where there are a lot of pine trees around it. And I opened up this area many years ago to create a wildlife opening on this farm. So if you're looking up here in these branches, you'll see the ones on the right, which again, in this particular case, I've completely changed the direction of the camera angle. Those branches on the right are pointing towards the southern sky. That is where that tree was growing, and the branches were going towards the southern sky. Now what happened, this is really interesting to me at least, is that these branches that you're looking at right here on the lower section of this tree, they weren't there 9 years ago. And when I opened up this area right here, basically what happened is the branches that were just bursting and wanting to come out, who couldn't come out, which could not come out because there was not enough sunlight on the tree, then burst out of this tree and started growing. And so that is why on this particular section of the tree, which is lower, which again 9 years ago had no branches on it, this low on the tree, branches are growing all the way completely around this tree because it has complete exposure sunlight on all directions and all surrounding areas of the tree. So I just went back and listened to what I just filmed for you, and I'm getting concerned that I'm sounding more discouraging than encouraging. What Regulator 5 is saying is absolutely true, and I've said it a number of times in my classes too. This is one of those things that will require you to get out a lot. I say that because if you were to just look at any basic tree out in a forested canopy and see that it has a lot of branches on one side and assume that that is towards the southern sky, then you're going to be making a grave mistake. However, someone who spends a lot of time outside, and who doesn't want to do that, if we have the possibility, then let's get out as much as we can and practice. Take your compass with you. Look at trees. Look at your compass, see where the southern sky is so that you know exactly what you're looking at. And go around from tree to tree to tree. You will start to get a feel for what it is that we're talking about, because it's absolutely true. It's just one of those things that, and this is why I'm discovering nobody's got this on camera yet, it's really hard to show, because I'd have to show you 100 species. I would literally have to look at 100 species, maybe 20, 30 species at best, to get a good idea of direction so that I would feel comfortable with it. It's not going to come from just one single tree.